Day 4 has wrapped up for House committee hearings investigating the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. And today, officials spoke with state leaders that were pressured to overturn the election.
A lot of testimony here. Several GOP state officials took to the stand this afternoon, including Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, his deputy Gabe Sterling, and Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers. Now, Bowers, who you see right here, spoke about the intimidation that he faced from White House officials when it came to naming fake electors. The panel continues to uncover the full scope of former President Trump's efforts to spread unfounded theories of election fraud in an attempt to stay in office. Now let's bring in our chief legal correspondent, Seema Iyer.
Yeah, and Seema, the poll worker here, Shay Moss, and her mother, Lady Ruby, really kind of stole the show at the end of the hearings today. Does that help move the needle with obviously public opinion, but also what the objective is here of the hearings?
Okay, number one, I think it does in terms of getting the American public's attention. Now, the latest ABC polls, and this most recent polls, 58% of Americans think that Trump should be prosecuted for some type of crime.
Which is up from 52 in May before the hearings even started.
Exactly.
So it's had some sort of effect.
So we know quantitatively that the needle is being moved. Now, what the committee wants is for more people, more of the American public, to care about this. And how do you get us to care? You show us real people, not just politicians, not just people who are appointed to a certain position within their state, but people like Shay Moss and people like Ruby Freeman, who calls herself Lady Ruby. That's how she's known as, and you can see her right there. Even through that video, that deposition, she did, as Brian just said, steal the show because of her charisma, because of her saying to the committee, I lost my name, I lost my reputation, I lost my sense of security. Me and my daughter were essentially scapegoats for Trump and his inner circle. And how that pushes the narrative forward is that it shows not only this effort by Trump and his inner circle to put forth this stop the steal dialogue, right? That's their theme. But also to intimidate and harass not people just on the other side of the aisle, right? Because there's one thing about intimidating, harassing another politician, but to intimidate and harass poll workers. Shay has been doing this for 10 years.
And it was her reason, too, forever wanting to have this job. You know, to be able to work as an election official, that she just felt like, you know, the history of African Americans not being able to vote and her explaining why she wanted this job, to all of a sudden to be brought on the national spotlight that her life is at stake, her grandmother and her mother. She's an only child. She's her grandmother's only child. So I think it really...
And the grandmother was also intimidated.
But it really humanized this. Because could you imagine somebody being outside of your house, threatening your life? You have no idea what they're going to do.
And there are plenty of poll workers who are Republicans. So even people may assume Shay, because she's black, she's a Democrat, fine. But there are a lot of poll workers just like her.
I do want to point out really quickly here, with Rudy Giuliani making that comment, saying of that video that we saw with them allegedly under question of the passing of the ballots. And he said they were passing them like crack cocaine. I just thought that was just so rude and disgusting.
It was disgusting. It was horrifying.
Yeah, and there's also the underlying theme of attacking elections overall is the undermining of democracy in general, which is kind of what the whole goal is, part of this as well.
Yeah.
Right, because they're definitely going through the process.
Well, we heard today Republican witnesses tie Trump directly now into this whole fake election scheme, specifically with that leaked phone call that we saw with Brad Raffensperger talking to Trump that went public, you know, before this hearing. When that came out, does this really tie everything into this overall goal of the hearing now?
I think the phone call, which we knew about, but more importantly today, new information, just basically explained to the American people that each state has one slate of electors, and that Donald Trump and his inner circle were trying to replace the legitimate Biden electors with fake Trump electors. And they showed today these documents. They were illegitimate documents. Actually, they look like forgeries, where that is how I guess an elector would submit that type of document. Also really interesting today, it happened very quickly, but a lot of people may have caught this. It was Ken Cheeseborough. He was the Trump supporter Wisconsin lawyer who actually may have initiated this entire idea of the fake electors. And also interesting, so we heard about Cheeseborough, but we also heard one of the witnesses, I think she was the chairperson of the RNC, who was also approached by Trump and his inner circle to find what they called contingent electors, okay? So you had all of these different facets. It wasn't just the main players, but all of these outside organizations like the RNC now getting involved, and the fact that the circle is expanding. We heard a lot more about Mark Meadows today as well.
And it's also important to point out with your point, Seema, that those 7 states that were targeted were swing states. Those were, Joe Biden won those states. When you look at whether it was Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, of who was being targeted for this whole fraud.
Right.
And it was more of, hey, Trump, I think he was recorded, or there was testimony where he was saying, hey, look, we're all Republicans. I thought we would get better buy-in here.
No, you're right. So that was Rusty Bowers from Arizona heard Trump say that.
Right.
When he was on the phone with Giuliani.
Right. So that pressure there, very, very real.
And Trump
very,
said,
very
give him
present.
what he wants. But he never got it. He never got the proof.
It is an investigative committee of Congress. It's not a criminal trial here, but you can certainly see what's laid out before of criminality that has been performed here.
And that's what they're supposed to do. I mean, really, that is the task, right? I mean, I know between Chairman Thompson and Liz Cheney and some others, there has been just some dispute on whether there will be a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. However, that is one of their goals, supposedly.
Well, you think Mayor Garland is definitely all eyes on this with all of this, and plus also the Attorney General in Georgia, in Fulton County.
Yes, they're still investigating that as well.
Right.
If you, moving forward, because we have Thursday's hearing coming up, that's when it's going to move more up to where we're going to go with what happened on the actual January 6th and tie in there.
Yes.
What do you see happening on Thursday?
Okay, so just if they can tie in the harassment and intimidation of the state officials and the poll workers, plus the fact that there was this fake elector ballot, and because of that message, so during the time the election, so way before January 6th, when people were being harassed, Rusty Bowers being called a pedophile, Shay Moss being called like she was dealing drugs with her mom, and then also her being harassed, her grandmother. So you take all of that, right? So you have to say, because of Donald Trump, all of his supporters were threatening state officials and poll workers. Take that sentiment and move it forward to January 6th. If they intimidated people then, they intimidate people now on January 6th.
All right, our viewers right now are taking a look there at Arizona Republican House Speaker Rusty Bowers. He testified today that Trump lied to him about him in a press release, and he then responded with emphatically saying, look, I would never say an election was rigged. So what stood out about Bowers' testimony to you? I think that was, for me, kind of a turning point of, wow, he's just really laying out. He said all statements across the board, if it says rigged, I would not have said that.
Well, he's called the Constitution divine. He said it was foreign to my entire being to go against the law. But the bottom line, what stood out for me about Bowers is how his wife and his ill daughter and himself, his home, they were terrorized. He was accused of being a pedophile. He's been a public servant his whole life. It was disgusting
A Republican
to me. Yes,
public servant.
A Republican who wanted Trump to be reelected.
And so did Brad Raffensperger, too, who's the Secretary of State of Georgia. He said that, made that very clear.
Another
Look, I wanted
Republican.
Trump. Yeah, I wanted Trump to win. I'd hoped that he had won, but I didn't want to win at the cost of, lies and cheating.
Cost of the United States.
Things are definitely heating up, guys.
Constitution and the American people. All right, Seema Iyer, thank you so much. We can keep going here. Appreciate it.